Ooh, you love gambling. Ooh, spend all your money on Robux, which you can then spend on legendary spins. Ooh. So basically Sonic Speed Simulator, a game that by all means is not good. If you just take a glance at this game, aside from the Sonic iconography, this game looks like a glorified casino, which it is, but there's something about it that no matter how pay to win, or microtransaction heavy, or how grindy it all may seem, I can't help but find it really fun to play. Again, I would not consider this to be a traditionally good game, and not even a good Roblox game for that matter. But Sonic Speed Simulator, between all of the flashing slot machines everywhere, actually has some pretty good Sonic gameplay at its core. This game shows a little bit of love to pretty much every single part of the Sonic franchise, from the games, to movies, to TV, to even the comics, as there are entire worlds and characters you can unlock based off of all sorts of Sonic media. The gameplay is addictive, not because of the rush you get from gambling all your rings away, but because a lot of the worlds in this game are genuinely well designed and fun to run around in. The progression of the game itself is definitely lacking, and it is still a Roblox simulator, which if you don't know what that is, wow, where do I even begin? That could be like 5 videos on its own. But they're just kind of the perfect encapsulation of how mobile gamey feeling Roblox is, where you're pretty much just grinding to see numbers go up. And because it is a simulator, that does lend itself to a lot of pay-to-win mechanics and long grinds, so you can definitely burn yourself out on this game pretty quickly. There's a lot to go over with this game, so before we jump in, consider hitting the subscribe button if you enjoy this video, but let's get right on into Sonic Speed Simulator. Let's begin with the good, the part of the game that's actually fun, and is the reason I've spent so many hours on this game, despite it being the literal definition of slop most of the time. The first thing to really go over in this game is how the characters control, because this is unironically one of the best controlling Sonic games out there. It's up there with Sonic Adventure 1. Your movements feel important and responsive, and you can make sharp turns or stops as needed, since that's kinda just a general Roblox thing you can do. You can also control your speed value depending on how high of a level you are, so if you're going too fast, then you can slow yourself down as needed. The characters in this game have both a spin dash and a boost, both of which consume energy, so honestly there isn't much of a reason to use the spin dash, since it just kinda sucks. But the boost feels really good to use here, and it reminds me a lot of the boost in Frontiers. The only real issue I have with the way the characters control is that they feel really floaty, which is noticeable when you jump or fall, but you can get used to it pretty quickly. And in some cases it can be nice to help carry your momentum in the air, which yes, you can do, there is momentum! At least a little bit to a certain degree. You're almost always moving at top speed anyway, especially with the boost, but it does mean you can launch yourself off of ramps and things to get tons of height and distance, which the level design actually highly encourages in a lot of different places. The worlds in this game aren't built like linear get-to-the-goal Sonic levels, but are instead just open playgrounds for you to run around in. They aren't as big as something like the open zone in Frontiers, although some of them are still really big, but they act more like jungle gyms or play zones for you to explore. And just by watching the gameplay here, you can see that there are a ton of mini, let's call them segments, which are like mini running or platforming zones, but the best part of them is that you can keep chaining them all together, sometimes easily, and other times it can be a bit challenging, but it's super fun to do and pull off. Honestly, this is what I wished the open zone was more like in Sonic Frontiers. I actually prefer this kind of open zone style of gameplay over Frontiers' open zone, and before that statement gets me shot and killed, I only specifically mean the way the level design actually flows together. In Frontiers, there are more platforming challenges and puzzles for you to do, but they're all pretty separate from each other, and even though you can technically chain them together, kinda just by running in between each one, they all have a pretty clear start and end point, whereas the way levels are designed in Sonic Speed Sim is that you just kinda jump in and around from section to section all over the place. It feels a lot more purposeful in how the world itself is designed, still with big set pieces sure, but a lot of it just feels like a giant racetrack with tons of different branching pathways that all eventually either connect to another pathway or loop back around to another branching segment so that you never stop running. And personally, I love it. It's super fun to just see how long you can keep going, and how many different routes and places you can see around the maps, before your momentum eventually gets stopped from either taking a wrong turn, or just completing whatever quest you were doing. And although these worlds have some pretty heavily automated sections, mostly with rail grinding or excessive amounts of loops, they still feel super satisfying to run through, and these automated sections can oftentimes feel like automated sections in a normal Sonic level, often being ways of keeping the pace while allowing you a short break. Now, this isn't to say that every single world in this game is amazing, because honestly, some of them aren't, especially since quite a few of these worlds were intended to be limited time event worlds, but eventually got converted into permanent ones during some random update. I'll be dead before I actually keep track of this game's updates. So some of them are quite clearly lacking compared to others. A lot of the mid to late worlds feel very samey, often being big floating arenas with platforms and rails, with not as much replayability as some of the earlier worlds, but you can definitely tell which ones were intended to be permanent, and which ones were built with just a few weeks of playtime in mind. Green Hill, Emerald Hill, and Hilltop are incredible because of how expansive they are, and just how many different ways you can chain together the mini segments to spice things up. And moving through certain worlds is also fun because of the characters you can play as. I'm not exactly sure when it was, but they've started adding character-specific abilities depending on who you play as, like with Tails you can fly for a short duration using energy, some Shadow Skins can use Chaos Spear, if the character you're using is a super character, you can have unlimited flight while boosting, and there might even be others that I'm missing too, or that will be added in future updates. But all that's to say that you can traverse these worlds using your character's abilities in a lot of different ways. Whether you're specifically trying to farm enemies, or search for specific collectibles around the map, or just want to get through it as fast as possible, you can use different characters in different ways. My personal favorite to use is ESP Silver, which is essentially Super Silver, however he doesn't have a dedicated super meter like Doom Shadow or Supersonic, which means he pretty much has unlimited flight without a timer as long as you can boost forward. Now that's probably the most overpowered character I have, but I still like breaking out a bunch of different characters from time to time, either to level them up or just play as somebody new for a change. And the game actually makes you want to play as new characters, because the character variety here is genuinely insane. Sure, a lot of it is used to generate infinite money, because they can't just sell these skins in the shop or in a gambling wheel, but that means that we get characters like Grindrail Sonic, Chrome Metal Sonic, Movie Knuckles, Tuxedo Classic Sonic, Doom Shadow, Golden Omega, Super Neo Metal Sonic, and even some lesser known characters like Tangle, Gemerald, and Marine. And even they get alternate costumes as well. It helps that this game has been out for a few years now, so there's actually a lot of content here, a lot of which you can just pay for, but again, the freedom you get when picking your character is unlike any other Sonic game. Alright, so if the good parts of this game were the feel of the gameplay, and the level design, and the character variety, then what could possibly bring all that down? Oh. An unfortunate side effect of being not only a Roblox game, but also one made by GameFam, means that Sonic Speed Simulator is pretty much designed to squeeze out as much profit as physically possible. If you don't know who the company GameFam is, I'm not gonna get into it here because that isn't the focus of the video, but if you want to know more, I suggest googling Sonic Sweatshop Simulator and going from there. Anyways, the first and most painfully obvious thing that you'll notice about this game immediately when getting on it for the first time are the insane amount of microtransactions that are present. Now, to explain how microtransactions work on Roblox, we need to go over the two main types, both of which are bought with Robux, the Roblox platform currency that you buy with real money. The first kind of microtransaction is called a Game Pass, and these can only be bought once and give out some sort of permanent upgrade. Now, Sonic Speed Sim has a ton of these, from things like double XP, a permanent magnet, and all sorts of other garbage. Now, I actually don't think Game Passes are all too bad. Sure, they can be, and are definitely pay to win, but since they're a one-time purchase, most of them are pretty fair in terms of what they provide, since you know exactly what you're getting out of it when you buy it. If I buy the double skill pieces Game Pass, I know exactly what I'm getting out of it, which is twice as many skill pieces when rebirthing. Exactly what it says in the description. So these are completely optional purchases. In this game's case, they're extremely overpriced, but still optional. But the second type of microtransaction on Roblox are the repeatable purchases. These are things like buying red star rings, and normal rings, and boosts. You get the idea. It's things that can be bought without a limit. Your typical mobile game microtransaction, aka the really bad ones. These are not only super overpriced, but of course the game becomes balanced around wanting you to spend money on the game, so they artificially inflate the grind of most quests and challenges so that you're more likely to spend money on the game. And I won't even lie, they've gotten me a few times in the past. Sometimes you're just really close to upgrading your next Chow friend, and rather than grinding for more red star rings to upgrade it, why not just spend some money on it and you can get it right away? Of course, that defeats the whole point of playing the game, but in the moment, it just feels like a natural thing to do. Not to mention that Roblox is mostly a kid-oriented platform, so having this amount of heavy microtransactions can be super predatory towards them. And I haven't even mentioned the literal gambling that this game has. You are constantly gambling in this game all the time. Whether you want to open eggs for a new Chow friend, or doing your daily spin hoping for a character, or buying more spins afterwards, this game has gambling as a part of its core gameplay loop, and you will need to engage with it in order to progress in some form or another. And sure, people like myself are old enough to see the problems here, and not actually spend hundreds of dollars on in-game slot machines, but again, you have to remember that Roblox is a platform with a ton of kids on it. So many of them are just playing on their parents' phones or tablets, and when they see, "Ooh, spin for legendary Sonic," I guarantee you a ton of them have done it before. Because this isn't a Sonic Speed Simulator exclusive issue. This is a problem that has been plaguing the entire Roblox platform for almost a decade. And yet Roblox doesn't care in the slightest how many child gambling casinos are on their platform, because why would they? They make bank off of it. Same goes for Sega in this regard. They probably make so much money from this game that they would never want to get rid of the literal gambling going on here. So everyone just kinda let it happen, and it will continue to happen. I genuinely don't see a point where these kinds of systems on Roblox will ever fade out unless something major happens at Roblox that forces them to be more strict about it. Sonic Speed Simulator is by no means the only one promoting this kind of stuff on Roblox, but it is a huge problem with the game that simply cannot be overlooked when going over anything about it. Aside from the literal gambling though, you can also just outright purchase certain characters or Chow friends, defeating the purpose of most quests and grinds, because again, if there's an opportunity for money to be made, you know they'll take it. And even if there isn't an option to buy certain characters, oftentimes you'll be allowed to just outright skip certain parts of quests by paying to complete them. I don't think I've ever seen a game with such genuine thought and effort put into the gameplay also make it so easy and encouraging for you to just skip playing it entirely. I probably wouldn't have even played half the amount of hours of this game as I have if the gameplay itself wasn't fun, because so often are you encouraged or promoted to just skip over it all. It's just such a waste in my eyes. Having a game that feels good to play be ruined by so many pay-to-win, grind-skipping, gambling microtransactions. But like I said, nothing will be done about it, so unfortunately, you just have to deal with it. And I barely even touched on the fact that this game's quests are incredibly grindy, with events taking multiple hours, sometimes even days to finish, because of how much you just need to do of a monotonous task, but it's like that so you're more inclined to buy that 2x event boost, or that permanent magnet game pass, so that you can maybe unlock your favorite Sonic character Tangle just ever so slightly faster. It just makes me sad, seeing the state this game is in, because when it first came out, it genuinely felt like a proper Sonic game on Roblox. And now it's a casino where you get to run around as your favorite Sonic character every so often. But I'd rather not end this video on the worst note, so let's just end it with a mid one then. Basically just going over everything else that isn't what I loved, or is a microtransaction. So, I know I just talked about the grind being way too high, but that's purely a numbers issue. The quests I actually think lend themselves to the style of gameplay that the game is going for pretty decently. A lot of them are just collecting X amount of things scattered around the map, which is fine, not super engaging, but it means that you can chart out the most optimal routes to collect stuff, and can be pretty fun for like 30 minutes. Another one is collecting things that are in set locations around the map, and then bringing them back to certain drop-off points. Again, pretty but fun to add onto the already existing collectible system for a bit more engagement. Then you've got other quests like leveling up your character, or performing tricks on grind rails, or collecting chaos orbs, basically just playing the game as intended. These are fine because they're a good way to track progress and make sure you're still using other characters, and a lot of the time you do them while also doing another quest, so they aren't very tedious. Other than that though, there isn't much to the quest system here. They're just a way to get you to engage with the new content and unlock characters. Another thing you're constantly doing too is leveling up your character. With each level up you gain more speed until it eventually caps out to prevent the game from breaking. So once you hit that point, you're pretty much free to rebirth your character, which resets you back to level 1, and gives you some skill points. These skill points can be put into things like your player's power, which lets you do more damage to certain bosses, and badniks around the map. There's actually quite a few stats in this game, the bulk of which you get from the Chow friends, the ones you gamble for, and most of them are kinda useless, hence the gambling, but they do provide you with a way to play the game how you want to play, especially depending on the type of quest you're doing. If you need to be collecting rings for a quest, well then equip a Chow friend with a high ring stat, and boom, you're collecting more rings per ring. Need to fight a boss a bunch of times? Equip a Chow with a high power stat so you can do more damage and beat it faster. It's really basic, and a lot of other simulators on Roblox do this, but it at least adds the tiniest bit of depth to the meta grind of the game, if you're into that. There are also a ton of different Chow friends that exist, from your standard colored Chow to hero Chow to even the fast friends being partners that you can get in the game. Alongside the stat boost that Chow friends give are trails and upgrading your actual Sonic characters, but those basically all do the same thing and have the same gameplay loop of gambling, so there's no need to go over them. Finally, there's the actual Roblox social aspect side of this game, which seems often overlooked, but I definitely do think it's still there. As much as I despise about this game's monetization methods, it being on Roblox means that a lot of kids are getting introduced to the Sonic series for the first time ever. And while I would definitely hope for a better first impression, I honestly don't think this is the worst one out there. It's inherently a game where you cannot lose. Okay, well you can lose, but not in like a traditional Sonic video game sense. So it makes it very beginner friendly to a lot of new and probably pretty young Sonic fans. You can play as your favorite Sonic characters, play with your friends, trade with others in this trading hub area, and just have a fun time running around with other people in the game, which is actually a really cool aspect of this game that not many other Sonic games have taken advantage of, or even have at all. The problem is just everything about the monetization taking advantage of a kid who might be playing it, but I won't go on another rant in this video, because you've already heard plenty. Sonic Speed Simulator is a very weird game, because on one hand I like a lot about it, and I really enjoy just opening up the game and running around the worlds for a while. I've probably done it more often than I have with Frontiers, so that should at least count for something, since I also really like Frontiers. But there's also just so much garbage about this game, completely bogging down what would otherwise be a very fun Sonic game. So should you give it a try then? Well, I'd say yeah. I mean, it's free and it's on Roblox, so it is pretty popular. But of course, you need to expect what you're getting into if you decide to give it a shot, since the microtransactions here will eat you alive if you don't keep them in check. But the gameplay at its very core is fun, and I think the world design flows together nicely. So if that's what you want to play the game for, then by all means, it's a blast for a little while. You just need to make sure that you aren't gambling. Did someone say gambling? Oh boy, let's go gambling! Woo!